Rental property investing tips that you wish you knew sooner. I see a lot of you making these mistakes almost on a daily basis, to be honest with you. And I'm not fabricating that. So I've got a Facebook group. If you're not in it, you probably should. It's Build Short Term Rental Wealth. Just go to Facebook and type that in, Build Short Term Rental Wealth. 33,000 members. And I see these posts that are happening almost every single day, and people get caught up in bad investments. Number one, is you're buying markets. That's the number one thing that I do not want you to do. And I'm going to give you like 6 or 7 critical tips here to make sure that when you are in the investment side that you are maximizing your return. So number one, we do not buy markets. We are buying individual properties, right? And when you are looking at a property, there's a couple of core things that you need to do as you get into number 2. Number one is we're invest in properties. We do not invest in markets. So when you see people on social media talk about, oh my God, you'll invest in the Smokies or in Broken Bow or whatever, the market's great. The market is not great because number 2 is you have to break everything down by bedroom count. So, and there's also these sub markets, right? So the Smokies is an example. You got Dollywood, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, and Sevierville, right? Then you could even factor in Douglas Lake. There's other places that are kind of parts of the Smokies, and they're all going to be completely different. But the biggest step down that you need to take is into bedroom count. So I go into FCR Insights, AirDNA, and I'm looking at these sub markets by bedroom count. You look at the Gulf Coast. Hey, I want to invest in the Emerald Coast. The Emerald Coast literally runs from Port St. Joe, Cape Sandblast, the Forgotten Coast, all the way over to Dauphin Island. The reality is I kind of look from Panama City Beach. Then you have 30A, then you have Destin, 3 distinct submarkets. Now we go farther, you got Fort Walton Beach, then you got Pensacola, then you're into Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, and Fort Morgan, Alabama. That's the entire Emerald Coast. We don't invest in the Emerald Coast. We invest in the bedroom counts in smaller specific markets. I've made over $3 million, actually probably close to $4 million now just in Gulf Shores. And this is going to be tip number 3. Number 3 is you want to look at the barrier to entry cost. So if I take a subject property in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and then I take that exact same property, and let's say my number 1 performing property is a 6-bedroom, 6-bath property in Gulf Shores, Alabama that has a pool. It's got all the amenities on it. It's directly across the street from the beach. And for 3 years, I've had no houses in front of me. So I get to market that as almost beachfront. Number one, that really doesn't even exist in 30A. You might be able to find that in Panama City Beach and then cross over into the beach. But if I'm buying in the 30A area or in the Destin area, even in Laguna Beach, that cost is probably 30% less. The entry cost in the Gulf Shores market, it's even cheaper in the Fort Morgan market than it is in PCB or really the prime locations, Laguna, 30A, and Miramar Beach. The rents are the same, and I would beg to differ that I can generate even more revenue in the Gulf Shores market because of what I'm going to get into in number 4. So the entry cost is critical. That's why I only invest in the secondary and tertiary markets. So I have never owned in Destin. I've never owned in 30A. I went and I started in Fort Morgan, Alabama, and I've owned in Fort Morgan. I've owned in Gulf Shores as opposed to investing. Now I vacation there, and I'm actually under contract right now for a condo in PCB, and this is going to blow your mind. I'm going to get to that in number 5, so stick with me. Number 4, once we get through that entry cost, is really looking at the way that you're purchasing. There's creative financing, and you don't have to go all pace Morby and do sub 2 and stuff like that. But what you can do is you can go in and do seller credits. That's a huge component for me. As I get into number 5, we'll talk about that in a second. But the seller credit, I'm under contract in Panama City Beach in a condo. $440,000 was the contract price, $40,000 seller credit. So that's a 10% seller credit, $40,000. That is going to be about half of my renovation cost. So that is a huge number to be able to get on a price point of $440,000. Now it came back and only appraised for $435,000, and the sellers didn't want to drop down the price. They wanted to take out on my seller credit. Said nope, I'll back out of the deal. So I ended up getting the price reduction to $435,000. So the end acquisition price is $435,000, $40,000 seller credit. That is a huge component that 99.9% of you are not utilizing. I pull that over from my commercial development experience. This happens every day, twice on Sundays. In the commercial side, it is not common inside of the short-term rental space with residential side. So most agents will tell you, oh, that's illegal. We can't do that. That's not true. You just need to know how to execute it. I've got a whole nother episode here, if you're whether on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening, or here on the YouTube channel, with myself and Tyler Kuhn, who's kind of the king of seller credits. And we break down exactly how you can obtain these seller credits, and it's 100% legal. Number 5 is going to be investing into condos. So a lot of you think that, Bill, you're the super property guy. Sure, I coined and branded that term, and I built super properties, but a super property has nothing to do with the size of the property. I mean, I get it. Some of you have seen my property in Montana, Whitefish, Montana, where I host a B&B camp, and I can sleep, 28 people there. I've got a property in Smith Lake. Started with my 5-bedroom. Now I just renovated 12 bedrooms, 9 baths. Can sleep 38 people there. I do have bigger properties. I've got a big property in Banner Oak, North Carolina that sleeps 18 to 20 with a guest house, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, specifically if President Trump, and it looks like he's going to bring our cost segregation benefit back to 100%, the tax benefits are a huge deal. So I'm actually selling a property now, and I'm going to roll that, and looks like I'm going to buy my very first property in the Nashville area, not in Nashville proper, but it's a place north of Nashville, and it will be 8 bedrooms. I'll probably actually sleep about 24 people in this property. That will be a large property. It will be a super property. Once again, I'm going there because of the tax benefits. There's 4 things that you need to invest into, and that's actually number 6. And I'll get to this right now. Number 6 are the 4 pillars that you should be looking at to invest in real estate. And this doesn't matter if it's long-term, mid-term, or short-term. And this is in every single property, right? And it's in order of priority. Number 1 is cash flow. Does the property underwrite from cash flow? Your pro forma that you fill out, if you don't have a pro forma, the calculator, if you will, this is a little bit more in depth than everybody else's calculators. Just click the link down below to get the pro forma. It's 100% free. So the cash flow is number 1. I am not buying a property if it doesn't cash flow. Too many people got in trouble back in COVID, and they were buying just for tax benefits, and then they have a dog of a property. And as Ryan Bakey, the goat of CPAs in the short-term rental space, says, don't let the tax tail wag the investment dog, right? You don't want a dog in your portfolio. So cash flow is number 1. Number 2 is going to be appreciation. So I am looking at appreciation in every single market. It's one of the reasons I love Whitefish, Montana. Look, if you follow me along, where I have B&B camp, I bought a huge property. I'm having major problems with the neighbors, major problems, with getting an STR permit. And to be very honest with you, I had a conversation. I just met in person. One of my neighbors was on a lift with Bria and met the husband. And then afterwards we were having dinner and I met the wife. So I'm selling the property and just literally going under contract probably right now as I'm recording this. Paid $2.95 million, selling for $3.4 million. And I'm going to move those assets here to Nashville. And that's where the Savvy Center will be instead of Montana. That will be my personal training center that I'll have here at a super property that I'm building. So one of the things is looking at appreciation. So think about that. And I closed in July. So August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. Right, almost into April, but essentially 8 months. And I paid 2.95 and selling for 3.4. That's one of the reasons that I look for appreciation. So it's cash flow number 1, and then appreciation number 2. And it's one of the reasons I love Whitefish, Montana, because the appreciation is skyrocketing right now. And some of you may be asking, why are you selling the property? Honestly, I'm in the process. I have an engineer rewriting the COSA to the state level, but it's just, the neighbors don't want it, and I don't want to be a bad neighbor, and I can get out of it without losing money, and I'll reinvest those funds. So that leads me to number 6, and kind of using this same example. I've got roughly $850,000, $900,000 in cash sitting in this property. It will cost me another $150,000 to $200,000 to get to permits. So instead of making that investment, I am looking at a return on equity audit. Whether you have a long-term, a mid-term, you need to look at your cash payback your cash flow tied into, the amount of equity that you have in it. So I've got too much cash that's sitting here. Really, for me, it's an emotional decision. Bree and I love this property. We were just there, just hosted 2 couples retreats there. But the reality is the neighbors don't want us, and I don't want to be a bad neighbor. I mean, I take abundantly good care of the property and my neighbors and all that stuff, but these guys hate it. So I'm going to go put my money elsewhere where I don't have to deal with their crap, to be honest with you. So I could give them the big bird and an FU, but you know what? That's just not the way that I roll. I wouldn't want somebody coming and doing something next door to me that I didn't want. So I can get out of this and actually turn a profit. So I'm going to make that move. And the one thing that I'll tell you we talked about this a lot at the couples retreat with my wife is Deb Wood, my agent and really good friend down in Gulf Shores, who is now retired, but she always says there's always something better. And that's something that I'll share with you. If you're just holding on to a piece of real estate just for appreciation, and a lot of people think that you failed, right? Because your cash flow isn't, withstanding the appreciation. So if your return is 8 times or greater, I believe you should sell the property. You can't really justify with rates to refi at this point or do a HELOC. That's too risky in my opinion, but sell that property and reinvest. Many of you have so much equity because especially if you bought before 2022 that you can probably get a 2-for-1. You can sell your property, tap into that equity and then redeploy into 2 properties and double your cash flow. That's why I'm always selling, looking to sell. So back to number 5, cash flow number 1, appreciation number 2, number 3 is debt pay down. Don't do these, 40-year loans with 30-year amortization, interest only, that type of stuff. You want to pay your debt down, especially if you're at a 6.5, 7.5, 8% interest rate. And if you're at an 8% interest rate, I'd be looking at refinancing now because you might be able to get down to 7%. Anytime you can get a 1% delta, you should look at refinancing. And then the last one, number 4, is going to be those tax benefits. So remember, that's number 4. That's not number 1. Also, I'm going to have a recapture. I am cost sagging that property. And then I will do the lazy mans. I'm not doing a 1031. And the way this will work, if we go back to 100%, so I'll get the 60% to offset my 2024 taxes on the Montana property. And then I will go in and get 100% on a property it looks like I'm going to purchase at $2.6 million here in Nashville. So typically, if it was the same percentage for the cost seg benefit, I wouldn't pay off all the taxes. I wouldn't be able to, there would be a delta that I would owe. But because I'm going from 60% to 100%, even though I'm dropping down $300,000 in price, that will help. The 7th thing is land costs. When you're looking at making those investments from a cost seg standpoint as one of those 4 things, the tax benefits, I'm looking at land. That's one of the reasons the PCB condo will be the first place I bought in the beach, gosh, in over 2.5 years. So I'd moved to Banner Elk, North Carolina. I'd moved to Smith Lake, Alabama. I'd moved to Montana. I'm looking at places with lower land values. But now as the land value increases in Montana, it becomes much more challenging. So that's number 7 is look at land value before you purchase. Especially if you're looking at, the tax benefits, beach sand is much more expensive than buying in the mountains. And, really the last thing that I want to share with you, which will be number 8, is really using the super grader before you go to using a Performa. So I've dropped the Performa link in here. I'm giving you my super grader. I just started sharing this. I've kept this close to my vest. I've only shared it with my inner circle and mastermind members, but it's so important. So when I'm underwriting a property, I don't go straight to Performa. I'm using Avery Carl's, she calls it the enemy method in her book. But I calculate everything and apply a score to the property that I'm looking to purchase and also the at least 8 competitive properties. And I'm rating views, location, design quality, interior amenities, exterior amenities, all these things to get a score, what I call the super score. And then I can take that and say, okay, well, this property I'm looking at buying is a 91. And then this property is outperforming this property by 30 grand, a year, according to STR Insights. And that's a 93 and it has this. So not only do you get a grade, but you're also seeing what opportunities you have to rise up to the very top level, whether it's amenities, whether it's design, whether it's number of bathrooms. Number of bathrooms are a huge deal, folks. Don't go buy a 5.2. You want to be as close to 1-to-1. You want 4.4s. You want 5.5s, 6.6s. But, don't buy, God, Island Park is known for this, and they've got like 7.2s or 7.3s. It's just insane. We need to try to get as close as we can on the 1-to-1s, not only for the resale value, but for the experience of our guests. So those are 8 critical things that you guys need to be looking at, these tips, before you start investing or for your next investment. And you need to follow through on all of those. I'd highly recommend going through and watching it again. If I've created any value for you, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.